guys, this is Julia with Book of Hours. I wanted to make sure that the feed loaded. I wanted to talk about some of the latest controversy that's been going on in our country, which is the outing of all of these famous actors and politicians, and actors become politicians who are suddenly being outed as perverts, pedophiles, and all this really, nasty stuff that seems to be plaguing our media these last couple of weeks. And it started, of course, with Harvey Weinstein. And it kind of felt like a witch hunt. And it kind of still does feel like a witch hunt. But, whenever I see something like this where a woman comes forward and talks about how a person in a powerful position has harmed her in some way, I always think of Monica Lewinsky. I always go back to that moment in our nation's history when the famous brunette intern, 19-year-old intern, in the White House under the Clinton administration was put on display for all of us to ogle and laugh at and comment on. And this was really before social media. So, and I just remember that this particular story about this intern who had an affair with the President of the United States, or I don't even think it was an affair, I think it was just a schoolgirl crush, and he took advantage of her. And I think that that's really what this was all about, when you look at it from that end. But of course, there was a darker, deeper, more sinister, method and action at play here. So Monica Lewinsky was a 19-year-old intern who was working at the White House, who was volunteering at the White House, I guess, in between high school and college. She did like an internship there under the Clinton administration, during the Clinton administration, and it hit home to me because she and I are about the same age. So she developed a crush on the President of the United States, and it was exploited. So that relationship, or that connection that they had, was exploited by the press and by some of the politicians in play during that time, because Bill Clinton had already decimated so many policies here in this country that people were dependent on, policies that helped the poorer communities get on their feet so they could start businesses of their own. He decimated welfare as we know it. He exploded the prison population and basically made slave labor legal again through the Omnibus Bill. He signed off on the Telecommunications Act, which meant that we have no original thought in our media anymore. So our First Amendment rights, we're seeing the beginning stages of corrosion. And so there were so many things that Bill Clinton did that were detrimental to our country. And there was another policy in place that was about ready to be signed off on. Actually, it had been signed off on, and it was written up by Newt Gingrich and his team. I'm sure the Heritage Foundation was behind it. Heritage Foundation being the right-wing think tank, which is behind the Affordable Care Act. So, which is a right-wing policy. A lot of people think that Obamacare is a liberal policy. It's actually a conservative right-wing policy that was created by the Heritage Foundation. Anyway, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton's team and those politicians in office at the time had signed off on the decimation of your Social Security. So we would no longer have Social Security as we know it. And there were a few members of Congress who were just like, okay, that's enough. And, you know, I would say that there were probably is equal Republican and Democrats. So just as many Republicans and Democrats were against this policy. And it wasn't that it was about ready to be signed. It was signed. And the next State of the Union address, or, you know, national message that Bill Clinton was going to give to the American people was that Social Security was going to die. That he had signed off on it, and this new law in place would basically take away Social Security as you know it. And a few well-meaning politicians who don't exist anymore in our current government, but this was probably the very last batch of politicians that actually had the welfare of the people and the citizens in this country in mind. They finally got together and said, okay, this is it. He's already decimated welfare as we know it. He's exploded the prison population. He's taken away our First Amendment rights. What's next? And sure enough, the decimation and complete annihilation of Social Security was next. It was signed off on. It was ready to go. So what they did, these politicians, these you know, well-meaning politicians, they worked behind the scenes with the media to begin a smear campaign against Clinton, and Monica Lewinsky was used as the scapegoat. See, there's that term again, scapegoat. So Monica Lewinsky was used as a way to infuriate the public, to get them to hate Bill Clinton. And boy, did a lot of people, you know, were screaming for impeachment at the time. I remember, you know, being in my early 20s, this was well over 20 years ago, and thinking, wow, I'm actually going to see a president of the United States of America get impeached because of his affair with this girl. And so the scandal was brought out into the public as a way to get the American people to really vilify the man and really hate him, so that he could never make that speech that he was going to take away Social Security. They knew that if you know, these politicians and these journalists, these hero journalists, and you know, and a lot of people threw the journalists under the bus too, saying, you know, this should have been kept quiet and behind the scenes. Well, if that's the case, then we all would have never known about Lewinsky, never known about the scandal, and he would have been able to pass the law that takes away Social Security, and he would have been able to make that speech, which he was ready to make to the American people. So whenever I see, you know, these scandals coming forward, and I see all of these women coming forward, and I see all of these women, you know, telling their stories and crying and cueing the tears and the crocodile tears and the anger and all this stuff, I think, okay, what's really going on? What's behind the scenes? Because that's exactly what happened with Lewinsky. They used her as a scapegoat to manipulate the American people to hate Clinton, so that Clinton could never come forward with that policy to take away Social Security. So, you know, a lot of people actually, you know, now that we look back at this point in our nation's history where we were actually going to legally lose Social Security as a protective mechanism for, you know, for our retirement, you know, protective policy in place for retirement. A lot of people praise Monica Lewinsky and, you know, say that she's a hero, that she actually saved Social Security. There's like a meme going around that at one point that said Monica Lewinsky saved Social Security, and then, you know, the conversation takes place. So a lot of people know this already, a lot of people don't. But so when you see these scandalous politicians that are being outed by these victims of abuse or whatever, I always go back to the Lewinsky story and say, okay, what's the real story going on? Are we about ready to lose another, you know, another civil liberty or another policy in place that's meant to protect us? What's really going on behind all of this, you know, crying and stuff regarding abuse of these women by these men in power? So always go back to Monica Lewinsky. She was used as a scapegoat to manipulate the American people to hate Bill Clinton for he took advantage of this, innocent 19-year-old intern that was simply trying to make her way into politics, and she had all this opportunity before her, and she was starting her life out, and he derailed her and made her, and he didn't derail her, but the media and the politicians in place, by using her as a scapegoat, derailed her education, derailed her career, and she had to take a different path in life, which, now she's a world-renowned speaker, and she's absolutely come back from all of it, over 20 years later. But again, we were about ready to lose Social Security benefits. We were about ready to lose that as you know it today, which is, for some people, it's the only way they survive. So, we were about ready to lose it, and we had actually lost it. It was a policy that had been signed off on and was in place, but it never went to the next step where it was implemented, because the Monica Lewinsky scandal was used as a way to vilify Bill Clinton and his team, and make it so that anything he said, we would just be so angry. Can you imagine if after all of this scandal, where it was proven that he had this, affair with her, and he took advantage of her, what with the blue dress and the pictures and everything. Can you imagine if the next week he came forward in front of the media and said, and now I'm going to take away your Social Security benefits. So not only am I going to boink an intern and get away with it, but now I'm going to take away all your benefits. There would have been an uproar. There would have been an outrage by the citizens. They would have stormed the Congress. They would have lined everybody up against the wall. So, a couple of well-meaning politicians who saw how this scandal could really avalanche into something bigger decided to use the Monica Lewinsky situation to basically save Social Security. So again, when you see these women coming forward who say that they're victims of these power players, these politicians or actors or directors or media moguls or whatever, you have to ask yourself, what's behind it? Really, what's behind it? Yes, it's terrible that they did suffer this abuse, but there's something else behind it. All right, this is Julie with Book of Hours. Thanks for tuning in. I'm gonna lift this up. Take a look at the tree.